The afternoon sun, usually a cheerful golden, cast long, distorted shadows across the suburban street, making the familiar look alien. Sarah, her hand instinctively resting on the gentle swell of her 8-month pregnant belly, felt a prickle of unease long before she even reached her doorstep. It wasn't the heat or the slight ache in her lower back. It was the stillness, an unnatural quiet draped over her usually bustling cul-de-sac, a silence that hummed with unspoken tension. As she rounded the corner of her perfectly manicured lawn, the source of her disquiet solidified into a formidable, furry barrier Ace, her K9 police dog, a magnificent German shepherd with a coat the color of midnight and eyes that usually held a playful intelligence, was planted squarely in front of her front door, not beside it, not waiting patiently, but blocking it, his massive body a rigid, unyielding wall of muscle and fur. Sarah stopped dead in her tracks, a cold knot forming in her stomach. Ace wasn't just standing there. His posture was taut, every fiber of his being radiating a primal alertness she knew all too well. His head was low, ears pricked, scanning the otherwise empty porch, and then the barks started, not his usual enthusiastic greeting barks, the ones that vibrated with joy at her return. These were low, guttural rumbles, deep in his chest, punctuated by sharp, urgent woofs that spoke of a threat, not a welcome. Ace, what is it? Boy. Sarah's voice was a little breathier than she intended, a tremor of fear threading through it. She knew K9 behavior better than most. Her late husband, David, had been a decorated K9 officer, and she, a former handler herself, had spent years immersed in the intricate language of these incredible animals. This wasn't Ace being disobedient or playful. This was Ace, the protector, the loyal guardian, warning her. She took a tentative step forward, her hand reaching out slowly, instinctively trying to reassure him. Come on, Ace, good boy. Let Mama in. But Ace didn't budge. His powerful body remained an impenetrable shield. His dark eyes, usually so soft and adoring, now held a glint of fierce determination. He let out another series of deep, resonant barks, each one vibrating with a desperate urgency that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. It was a sound she'd only heard him make a handful of times in his life during active threats, during real danger. A sudden, sharp pain flared in her abdomen, a false contraction, reminding her of the precious life she carried. Panic, cold and sharp, began to claw at her throat. Ace, please, she pleaded, her voice rising slightly. What's wrong? Is someone in there? He responded by shifting his weight, subtly, but enough to block her path even more completely. His barks grew louder, more insistent, echoing ominously in the sudden silence of the street. It was as if he was trying to convey an urgent, silent message, a dire warning that he couldn't vocalize beyond his protective cries. Sarah's mind raced, cycling through possibilities. Had she left the stove on? Was there a gas leak? A broken pipe? No, Ace's behavior was too specific, too targeted. He wasn't reacting to a generalized hazard. He was reacting to a perceived threat inside the house. Someone was in there. Or something. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken dread. The cheerful yellow of her front door, usually a beacon of safety and warmth, now seemed to mock her. An impenetrable barrier between her and whatever unseen danger lay within. Ace, her faithful companion, the embodiment of strength and loyalty, was telling her, in the only way he knew how, that home was no longer safe, and the chilling realization that struck her deepest was that she trusted him more than her own eyes. His ears twitched, catching a sound Sarah couldn't hear. A low growl rumbled deep in his throat, a warning to whatever was beyond the solid oak door. Sarah's breath hitched. She looked at Ace, then at the door, then back at Ace, whose unwavering gaze met hers, conveying a silent, urgent plea. Don't go in. The sun dipped lower, casting longer, more ominous shadows. The quiet suburban street, once a symbol of peace, now felt like the prelude to a storm. Sarah knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that something was terribly wrong. Sarah's initial fear began to transform into a cold, analytical dread, a familiar sensation from her years in law enforcement. She was a canine handler, not just by profession, but by an innate understanding of these animals. She knew Ace's every nuance, his subtle tells, the unspoken language they shared, and right now, he was screaming danger. Ace, show me, she commanded, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. She knew better than to force him. A K9, especially one as highly trained and intelligent as Ace, wouldn't defy a direct command unless the perceived threat outweighed the handler's instruction. This wasn't defiance. It was an urgent, desperate warning. He wasn't stopping her from going in. He was protecting her from what was already there. Ace whined, a low, guttural sound that seemed to vibrate through the very air. His gaze remained fixed on the door, his body a coiled spring of tension. He took a single step back, then another, but only enough to reveal a sliver of the doorframe. His head dipped, and his powerful nose, usually so busy sniffing out clues, nudged the bottom edge of the door, then scraped lightly against the wooden frame. It was a strange, almost theatrical gesture. Unlike his usual direct responses, Sarah knelt, wincing slightly as her pregnant belly put pressure on her thighs. Her eyes followed Ace's movements, trying to decipher his intent. She recalled David's lessons, his patient explanations of how K9s communicated beyond barks and growls, how their body language, their subtle nudges, their very breath could convey complex information. David had always said, "Listen to them. Sarah, they speak a language older than ours." And it's always the truth. And Ace was speaking volumes. He wasn't just warning her, he was pointing. Her gaze dropped to the spot where Ace had nudged. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Just the bottom of her sturdy oak door, the worn threshold, the usual dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. But then, as her eyes sharpened, she saw it. A faint, almost imperceptible scratch mark, fresh and jagged, on the lower right corner of the doorframe, just above the threshold. It wasn't old wear and tear. It was new. And beneath it, a tiny, almost invisible splinter of wood lay on the porch, as if it had just been dislodged. Her blood ran cold. Someone had tampered with her door, not forced it open from the outside. The locks looked untouched, but rather, something had been done to it from the inside. Or perhaps, someone had tried to get in, but Ace had stopped them before they could make a clean entry. "Inside," she whispered, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. Her hand went to her belly, a primal instinct to shield her unborn child. The terror that had been a distant hum now roared in her ears. Ace responded to her whisper with a sharp bark. Then another, more pointed nudge towards the scratch mark. He looked at her, then back at the door, his eyes conveying an urgency that needed no words. He wanted her to understand. He wanted her to know. A wave of nausea washed over Sarah, not from her pregnancy, but from pure dread. This wasn't a random break-in. This was something more sinister. The precision of Ace's warning, the specific way he drew her attention to the minute detail of the scratch, suggested a level of threat far beyond a common burglar. Suddenly, a faint creaking sound emanated from inside the house. It was almost imperceptible, a mere whisper of wood on wood, but in the unnerving silence, it felt like a gunshot. Ace stiffened, his low growl deepening into a menacing rumble. His hackles rose, a bristly ridge along his spine, a clear sign of extreme aggression and a readiness to defend. Sarah instinctively backed away, pulling her phone from her pocket with trembling fingers. Her mind screamed call 911, but a nagging voice, a trained instinct, told her to wait, to gather more information. What if it was nothing? What if Ace was reacting to a squirrel in the attic? No, that was illogical. Ace was a police dog. His training was paramount. As she held her breath, straining to hear over the pounding of her own heart, a voice drifted from within the house. It was muffled, indistinct, but undeniably male. "Sarah, is that you?" The voice was low, almost a murmur, yet it sent an ice pick plunging into Sarah's chest. It wasn't David. It wasn't a neighbor. And it wasn't the voice of someone who should be in her home. It was a voice she vaguely recognized, a voice that stirred a sense of unease she couldn't immediately place. Ace reacted instantly, a ferocious bark ripping from his throat, a warning that vibrated with raw power. He lunged slightly, straining against an invisible leash, towards the door, his teeth bared. He knew that voice. He knew the danger. Sarah's world spun. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The tampered door, Ace's unyielding blockade, the subtle scratch, and now, the voice. Someone was not only inside her house, but they were expecting her. Or rather, they were trying to lure her inside. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her voice shaky but attempting to project authority. She kept her distance, her hand still protectively on her belly, her eyes locked on Ace, who was now a snarling, protective sentinel. Silence. For a long, agonizing moment, only the thumping of her heart filled the air. Then, the voice again. Closer this time. Just on the other side of the door. "It's just me. Sarah, Marcus. I was just checking in. Heard you were back." Marcus. The name hit her with the force of a physical blow. Marcus Thorne. David's former partner. A name she associated with bitterness, resentment, and David's growing unease in the months before his death. Marcus had been passed over for promotions David had received, had been publicly reprimanded for a disciplinary issue David had indirectly reported. There was a history of bad blood, a simmering animosity that had always unnerved Sarah. But why would he be in her house? And why would he be trying to lure her in like this? A cold, horrifying thought solidified in her mind. Marcus wasn't just checking in. He was searching for something. And Ace was the only thing standing between her and that terrifying truth. The memory of David's last words, whispered on his deathbed after the accident, echoed in her mind. "Safeguard the truth. Sarah, it's hidden, the key. It's always where you least expect it." At the time, she'd dismissed them as delirious ramblings, the fading words of a man clinging to life. Now, they took on a chilling, prophetic significance. David had been working a complex, sensitive case, one he'd kept largely to himself, hinting only at corruption within the department. Had he stumbled upon something so explosive that it led to his accident, and was Marcus, his embittered former partner, involved? The pieces of the puzzle weren't just clicking now, they were slamming into place, forming a terrifying picture of betrayal and hidden agendas. Ace wasn't just blocking a man, he was blocking a conspiracy. And Sarah, carrying David's child, was now caught in the crosshairs. The fight or flight instinct surged, but her K9 training, her years of working alongside these intelligent creatures, reminded her to stay calm, to observe, to think. Ace was her shield, but he was also her guide. She had to trust him completely. The name Marcus hung in the air, a poisonous vapor. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her skin clammy and cold despite the afternoon heat. Marcus Thorne, the ghost of David's past, now a very real and terrifying presence in her home. Marcus had been David's partner for years, a relationship that had fractured and festered after a series of commendations and promotions had bypassed Marcus and landed squarely on David's desk. David, ever the diligent and honest officer, had also inadvertently provided testimony in an internal affairs investigation that led to Marcus's suspension for mishandling evidence. The bitterness had been palpable, a simmering resentment that David, with his unflappable optimism, had tried to brush aside. Sarah, however, had always seen the malice lurking in Marcus's eyes, the way his smile never quite reached them. Marcus, Sarah repeated, her voice a little stronger this time, the shock giving way to a nascent anger. What are you doing in my house? She kept a safe distance, Ace a bristling barrier between her and the door, from inside. Marcus chuckled, a dry, humorless sound that sent another shiver down Sarah's spine. Just checking on things. Sarah, heard you were due soon. Thought I'd drop by. His tone was too casual, too smooth. The kind of voice a predator uses to lull its prey. You don't just drop by uninvited, Sarah retorted, her hand tightening around her phone, her thumb hovering over the 911 button, especially not by breaking in. Breaking in. Marcus feigned surprise, his voice dripping with mock innocence. Nonsense. The door was unlocked. Just walked right in. You should really be more careful. Sarah, especially in your condition. A cold fury ignited in Sarah. This was a lie, a blatant attempt to manipulate her. She always locked her door. David had ingrained that habit in her, a professional paranoia that had saved them more than once. And the scratch mark on the doorframe, the dislodged splinter, those weren't signs of an unlocked door. They were signs of forced entry, meticulously concealed. That's a lie, she said, her voice trembling slightly with indignation. My door was locked. You broke in. Get out of my house. Marcus, now, or I'm calling the police. Oh, Sarah, don't be so dramatic. Marcus chuckled again, a more confident, unsettling sound this time. We can talk about this. Just come inside. It's important. What's important? Marcus, Sarah challenged, her gaze sweeping the quiet street. No one. Of course. Everyone was at work, or out running errands. She was alone, save for Ace, facing a man who was clearly dangerous, and who held a grudge against her deceased husband. David and I, we had unfinished business, Marcus continued, his voice dropping slightly, a hint of steel entering its tone. Something he had, something I need, and I have a feeling it's here. Something he hid from me, from everyone. The hairs on Sarah's arms stood on end. Safeguard the truth. It's hidden. The key. It's always where you least expect it. David's dying words crashed through her mind. No longer delirious ramblings, but a terrifying roadmap to Marcus's true intentions. David had been investigating a corruption ring within the force, a network of dirty cops involved in drug trafficking and evidence tampering. He'd hinted at it, vague warnings about bad apples and the rot within. He'd never named names, never given her concrete details, wanting to protect her. But now, she understood. Marcus was one of those bad apples, and he believed David had hidden evidence, something incriminating, right here in their home. The thought sent a shiver of icy dread through her. If Marcus was willing to break in, willing to confront a pregnant woman and a police K-9, then whatever he was looking for was crucial. It was enough to risk everything. And if he found it, what would he do to her unborn child? Ace, sensing her rising terror, let out a deep, throaty growl, a rumble that vibrated through the ground. His powerful body tensed, ready to spring. He looked from Sarah to the door, then back to Sarah, his intelligent eyes mirroring her fear, but also radiating an unwavering resolve. He was her protector, her shield, the last line of defense. "You're not getting anything from here, Marcus," Sarah declared, her voice finding a new strength, fueled by a mother's fierce instinct to protect her young. "Whatever David had, it's gone. I don't know anything about it." It was a lie, of course. She knew. Now. She just didn't know where. "Don't play coy, Sarah." Marcus's voice hardened, losing its pretense of civility. David was meticulous. He wouldn't just destroy something this valuable. He'd hide it. And who better to hide it from than his closest friend, his grieving widow? Perhaps there was a sneer in his voice, a cruel twist of amusement. "I know David. I know his habits. And I know he trusted you implicitly. He would have left you a clue, a breadcrumb trail, something." Sarah's mind raced, frantically sifting through every memory of David, every conversation, every mundane habit. Where would he hide something so critical? David had been a creature of habit, but also incredibly clever, with a dry wit and a penchant for puzzles. He loved riddles, codes, things hidden in plain sight. She remembered their secret spot, a loose floorboard in his old study, where he used to hide her surprise birthday gifts. It was a sentimental detail, a little secret just for them. But would he use something so obvious for something so dangerous? Then, another memory flashed. David, laughing, after she'd finally found a particularly well-hidden anniversary gift. "Always look where you least expect it, Sarah," he'd said, "or where it seems too trivial to matter." He'd pointed to the worn leather binding of an old, forgotten copy of Moby Dick on their bookshelf, a book they'd never read together. Sometimes the key isn't a key at all. Sometimes it's just a word. A word. Safeguard the truth. The key. It's always where you least expect it. Suddenly, Sarah's gaze fell to the scratch mark on the doorframe again. It was low, near the floor, and then she saw it. Not just a scratch, but a faint, almost invisible indentation, like a series of tiny, deliberate scores, not random, deliberate. Ace whined again, then nudged her hand, almost urgently. He looked from the scratch to her face, then back to the scratch, his powerful nose brushing against the wood. He was trying to tell her something, trying to direct her. Was it a code David had loved codes? Simple substitution ciphers, visual cues. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What if the key wasn't a physical key, or even a hidden object, but a direction, a specific place to look? Marcus's voice cut through her thoughts, impatient now. "Enough games. Sarah, I know you know something. Just tell me where it is, and this can all be over." The civility had completely vanished. His voice was cold, menacing, laced with a dangerous edge. Sarah knew she had to buy time. She had to figure out David's clue. Her life, her baby's life, depended on it. She looked at Ace, whose eyes were fixed on her, unwavering. He was her anchor in this terrifying storm. She had to trust his instincts. And more importantly, she had to trust David's. The ghost of his past and the truth he had tried to safeguard were converging on her doorstep. And Ace was the only barrier standing between her and a terrible fate. Inside the house, Marcus Thorne's lips curled into a predatory smile as he listened to Sarah's panicked responses. He moved silently, a shadow flitting between rooms, his eyes darting, searching. He wasn't just looking for something, he was hunting. And Sarah, unknowingly, was the key to his quarry. His hands, clad in thin leather gloves, deftly ran over the spines of books on a shelf, lifted framed photographs, and tapped against walls. Listening for any hollow sounds, his movements were precise, almost surgical, betraying a professional's touch. He had been in this house many times, as David's partner, as a friend. He knew its layout, its quirks, its secrets. Or so he thought. Marcus had meticulously planned this. He had been watching Sarah for weeks, ever since David's funeral. The outpouring of grief, the public sympathy for the hero cop, David Davies, had grated on him like sandpaper. Hero cop. David was nothing but a sanctimonious fool, a naive idealist who had stumbled into something far bigger than himself. And in doing so, he had sealed his own fate and threatened Marcus's carefully constructed empire. He remembered the day David died. The official report called it an accident, a reckless driver, a slick road. Marcus knew better. He had ensured the accident happened, subtly tampering with David's patrol car, just enough to make it appear coincidental. But he hadn't accounted for David's dying breath. He hadn't accounted for the words David might have whispered to his devoted wife. He paused in the living room, his eyes narrowing as he peered through the lace curtains. Sarah was still outside, defiant, clinging to that damn dog. Ace, that beast was proving to be a serious complication. Marcus had underestimated the canine's loyalty, his uncanny instinct. He had expected to slip in, find the package, and be gone before Sarah even returned. But Ace had seen him. Ace had blocked the door. A frustrated snarl escaped Marcus's lips. The package, that's what he called it, the flash drive. A small, innocuous device containing enough encrypted data to bring down half a dozen crooked officials, including Marcus himself, and dismantle a multi-million-dollar drug operation he'd been building for years. David had stumbled upon it. He'd recorded evidence, collected files, cross-referenced transactions. He'd even set up a dead man's switch, a contingency plan for its release if anything happened to him. Marcus had only learned about it through a careless slip of tongue from one of his compromised contacts. He knew David had hidden it. David wasn't stupid. He wouldn't carry something so dangerous on his person or leave it in a vulnerable place. He'd hide it somewhere secure, somewhere he knew Sarah would eventually find it, or where it would be safe until the right time. And the most secure place for David was always his home. His gaze swept over David's old study, now half converted into a nursery. Pink blankets lay folded on a changing table. Tiny clothes hung in a closet. A wave of bitter resentment washed over him. David had it all: the perfect family, the accolades, the unwavering moral compass. While Marcus, toiling in the shadows, felt perpetually overlooked, undervalued. This was his chance to finally claim what he felt he was owed. He returned to the foyer, his eyes scanning the area around the front door. He had picked the lock, a simple task for someone with his specialized training. But as he had pushed the door open, Ace had appeared, a phantom in the darkened hallway, snarling, teeth bared. Marcus had barely managed to force the door shut again, shoving a heavy antique chest against it to buy himself time. He had hoped Ace would tire, or simply settle down. Instead, the dog had decided to make a stand, forming an unyielding blockade. And then Sarah had arrived, complicating everything. He listened again to Sarah's voice, sharp and accusatory, from outside. "You're not getting anything from here. Marcus, whatever David had, it's gone. I don't know anything about it." Marcus smirked. A good bluff, but he wasn't buying it. Sarah might be pregnant, but she wasn't a fool. She was David's wife, a former K9 handler herself, and she was smart. She knew more than she let on, and David, in his final moments, would have undoubtedly given her a clue. However cryptic, he remembered David's obsessive nature when it came to puzzles. David had been fascinated by old codes, by hidden messages in plain sight. He had once boasted about a foolproof hiding spot. Something about the simplest solution being the most overlooked. He'd never elaborated. His eyes fell on the small, almost insignificant scratch mark he had inadvertently made near the bottom of the doorframe when Ace had violently shoved against the door from inside. He had been so careful to leave no trace, to make it look like an easy entry. But Ace, damn that dog, had forced his hand. Suddenly, an idea sparked in Marcus's mind. What if David hadn't hidden the flash drive in some elaborate safe or behind a fake wall? What if the key David had spoken of wasn't a physical key, but a riddle? A clue embedded in the house itself, a message only Sarah would understand. He looked at the scratch mark again, then at the sturdy oak door. He remembered David's fondness for the old-fashioned, the solid, the timeless. He often joked about how the oldest tricks are the best tricks. What if the clue was in plain sight? Something so simple, so mundane, that no one would ever suspect it. He walked over to the small, ornate coat rack near the door, running his hand over the polished wood. Nothing. He checked the umbrella stand, peered behind a potted plant. Still nothing. His gaze drifted to the framed photos on a side table, Sarah and David, smiling. On their wedding day, a pang of dark envy twisted in his gut. He heard Ace's fierce barks again. Closer to the door, a desperate attempt to communicate with Sarah. Marcus had to act quickly. Sarah was smart, and with that dog, she was a formidable opponent. Even in her delicate condition, he had to draw her in, separate her from the dog, or at least force her hand. He moved silently back to the door. Pressing his ear against the wood, he could hear Sarah's voice, a murmur, then a stronger declaration. She was getting bolder. She was thinking. He knew he couldn't stay hidden forever. The element of surprise was gone. He had to lure her in, confront her. The flash drive was in this house. He was sure of it. And he wasn't leaving without it. His hand reached for the doorknob, turning it slowly, carefully, just enough to create a small, almost imperceptible gap. He wanted to give her a glimpse, a hint of vulnerability. He wanted to make her believe she had an opening. He wanted to set the trap. He saw the tiny splinter of wood he'd dislodged from the doorframe. It lay innocently on the porch, a silent testament to his forced entry. And suddenly, a cold, calculating gleam entered Marcus's eyes. He had made a mistake leaving that splinter. But perhaps he could turn it into an advantage, a misdirection. He withdrew his hand from the door, a new, more insidious plan forming in his mind. He would let her think she was in control, let her believe she was outsmarting him, and then, when she was most vulnerable, when she was inside, searching, he would strike. The game had just begun, and Marcus Thorne was a master of the hunt, and he would stop at nothing to get what David had hidden. Outside, Sarah's mind spun, a whirlwind of fear, anger, and a desperate need to understand David's dying message. Marcus was inside. Marcus, with his bitter history and now, his chilling confession of unfinished business, the scratch mark, the splinter, Ace's frantic warnings, it all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. Marcus was after something David had hidden, something that put Sarah and her unborn child in grave danger. "Marcus, I'm calling the police," Sarah shouted again, her voice cracking slightly, though she tried to project confidence. Her finger hovered over the call button, but she hesitated. What would she tell them? "My husband's disgruntled ex-partner is in my house, looking for a flash drive my dead husband hid, and my K9 dog won't let me in." It sounded insane, and if Marcus truly had powerful connections, as David had subtly hinted, her call might go straight to a compromised officer, putting her in even greater peril. She had to figure this out herself, with Ace. Ace, sensing her internal struggle, let out a deep, mournful whine. He looked from the door to Sarah's face, his intelligent eyes mirroring her anxiety. He pawed at the ground, then nudged her hand again, his nose brushing lightly against the spot on the doorframe where the scratch mark was. He was insistent, trying to guide her attention back to it. "I know, boy, I know," Sarah murmured, her voice raw. She knelt, ignoring the discomfort in her belly, and ran her fingers over the jagged mark. It wasn't just a scratch. David was too meticulous, too precise. She remembered David's penchant for sending her on elaborate scavenger hunts for gifts. Each clue would lead to the next, often involving seemingly random objects or places in their home, but always with a logical, albeit playful, progression. He'd even taught her a few basic ciphers, just for fun. The key. It's always where you least expect it. That was David's voice, clear as day, and the scratch mark, so obvious, so crude, yet simultaneously so specific. She traced the marks with her fingertip. 3 distinct, parallel lines, then a deeper, shorter mark, like a broken code. What if it wasn't a random scratch at all? What if it was a symbol, a direction? "Ace," she whispered, her voice laced with desperation. "What are you trying to tell me? Is it something about the house?" Ace responded with an excited bark, his tail giving a tentative wag, the first sign of anything other than raw tension. He then nudged the scratch mark with his nose again, pulling back slightly as if to let her get a clearer look. Then he glanced towards the right side of the doorframe, where a small decorative planter box sat, filled with wilting petunias. Sarah followed his gaze. The planter box. David had hated those petunias. He'd always joked about replacing them with something less demanding. But what about it? It was a simple, everyday object, too mundane to be a clue, or where it seems too trivial to matter. David's words again. She reached out, tentatively touching the side of the planter. Nothing. Just damp soil and wilting leaves. But then Ace nudged her hand again, more forcefully this time, his nose pressing into the soil at the very edge of the box. Sarah cautiously dug her fingers into the loose soil. feeling for anything unusual. She pushed aside a few pebbles, a stray leaf. Her fingers brushed against something hard, smooth and cold. Her heart leaped. She carefully pulled it out. It was a small, river-worn stone, smooth and unassuming. She almost dropped it. A stone after all this. A simple stone. Her hopes plummeted. Marcus was looking for a flash drive, incriminating evidence. A stone was meaningless. But Ace whined, then nudged her hand with the stone in it. His eyes were fixed on the stone, then darted to the scratch mark on the doorframe. Sarah looked at the stone again. It was just a stone. But then, as her thumb unconsciously rubbed against its smooth surface, she felt it, a faint indentation, a series of tiny, almost imperceptible grooves carved into the stone, 3 parallel lines, and a deeper, shorter mark, the exact same pattern as the scratch on the doorframe. Her breath hitched. David. Oh, David, you brilliant, maddening man. He hadn't just made a scratch. He had made a matching mark, a clue in plain sight, a key that wasn't a key at all, but a signature. This stone wasn't the hidden object. It was the next step. It was the key to unlocking the truth. But what did it mean? And where did it lead? What now, Ace? She whispered, her voice filled with a desperate urgency. She looked at the stone, then back at the door, then around the porch. Ace barked once, sharply, then turned and looked at the house number, their house number, a simple, ornate brass 27, affixed to the wall next to the door. It had been there for years. What about it? Sarah looked at the stone in her hand, then at the brass numbers. Numbers. Codes. David's love for puzzles. The stone had 3 lines, then a short one, like a count. 3. Then 1. She examined the 27. The brass numbers were secured by 2 small screws each. Nothing unusual. But then she noticed something she'd never paid attention to before. The 2 had 3 screw heads visible. The 7 had only 1. 3 then 1, a pattern, a code. Her mind was racing now, adrenaline coursing through her veins. David wasn't just hiding evidence, he was leaving a trail only she, his puzzle-loving wife, and his incredibly intuitive K9 could follow. Is it the numbers, Ace? She asked, her voice barely a whisper, afraid to alert Marcus inside. Ace whined excitedly, nudging the 27 with his nose, then looking back at the stone in her hand. He was confirming it. The stone was the key to understanding the house number. But what about the house number? It was just 27. What could be hidden there? A micro SD card. A small document. She couldn't see any obvious seams or compartments. Then, she remembered another one of David's obscure hobbies, lock-picking and safe-cracking. He'd never pursued it professionally, but he'd spent hours meticulously studying old safe mechanisms, practicing with small, antique boxes, he often said. The most secure places are often the ones you access every day, but overlook, what if the numbers weren't just numbers? What if they were a combination? A sequence. Her gaze landed on the doorbell. A standard brass button, nothing special, but next to it, a small, decorative brass plate that held the numbers. She noticed a faint, almost invisible seam on the side of the plate, near the edge of the 7. Could it be a hidden compartment? She tried to pry it open with her fingernails, but it was too secure. She needed something thin, something strong. Marcus, a voice from inside called out. Closer now. Are you coming in, Sarah, or do I have to come out and get you? The threat was unmistakable. He was losing patience. Sarah looked at Ace, then at the brass numbers. Time was running out. She had to act. She had to trust her instincts. And more importantly, David's. The game was on. The metallic taste of fear was sharp in Sarah's mouth. Marcus's voice from inside, now devoid of pretense and dripping with menace, confirmed her worst suspicions. He wasn't just looking. He was hunting. And she was the bait. Ace, we need to get this, she whispered, her gaze fixed on the brass numbers 27 by her front door. The stone in her hand, with its cryptic matching scratches, felt warm, a tangible link to David. She knew David. He would never leave her without a way out, without a clue. And Ace, her loyal, brilliant Ace, was helping her follow that breadcrumb trail. The 2 with its 3 screws, the 7 with its single 3-1, a sequence. But what did it mean for the house number plate? She examined the brass plate again, her fingers tracing the faint seam near the 7. It was almost invisible, meticulously designed to blend in. David, the master of subtle details. She needed something thin, something sturdy, to pry it open. Her eyes darted around the porch. A loose nail. A forgotten screwdriver. Nothing. Only wilting petunias and a few decorative pebbles. Then her gaze fell to Ace's collar, his sturdy leather collar, with its gleaming metal buckle. It was solid, durable, and the buckle had a small, flat edge. It was a long shot, but she was desperate. "Ace, stay," she commanded, her voice firm. He sat, his eyes never leaving her, a silent guardian. She carefully unbuckled his collar, feeling a pang of vulnerability as she temporarily disarmed her protector. With trembling fingers, she maneuvered the edge of the buckle into the faint seam on the brass plate. It was a tight fit. She pressed, applying gentle, steady pressure. Her heart hammered against her ribs, echoing the urgency in her mind. Sweat beaded on her forehead, trickling down her temples. A tiny click. Sarah froze. Had she imagined it? She held her breath, straining to hear any sound from inside. Nothing but the thumping of her own heart. She pushed again, just a fraction harder. Another, more distinct click. The seam widened infinitesimally, revealing a hairline crack. Elation surged through her, quickly followed by a fresh wave of terror. She was right. David had hidden something here. But what? And what if Marcus heard? She continued to pry, her fingers aching, the buckle digging into her skin. Slowly, painstakingly, the brass plate began to separate from the wall, revealing a shallow cavity behind it. Inside the cavity, nestled snugly, was a tiny, sleek black rectangle, a flash drive. Sarah gasped, a choked sound of disbelief and triumph. It was real. David's truth. His hidden key. It was here, in plain sight, disguised as a mundane house number. She reached in, her fingers trembling, and carefully extracted the flash drive. It was cool and smooth in her palm, small enough to vanish if she clenched her fist. This tiny device held the power to expose a network of corruption, to bring down Marcus and his cohorts just as her fingers closed around it. A loud crashing sound erupted from inside the house. Marcus, he had heard, or perhaps he was just losing patience. "Sarah, I know you're still out there." "This isn't a game," Marcus's voice boomed, closer now, echoing through the thin wood of the front door. "Don't make me come out there." Sarah knew she had mere seconds. She couldn't call the police now. Marcus would be on her before she could even dial. And she couldn't run. Her pregnant body was simply too slow. She had only one option inside. She had to use the element of surprise, the knowledge that she now held David's crucial evidence. She quickly rebuckled Ace's collar, her fingers fumbling with the clasp. He whined, sensing her urgency, his eyes darting from the door to the flash drive in her hand, then back to the door. He understood. It was time to go in. Ace, retrieve, she commanded, pointing to the doorknob. It was an advanced command, meant for specific situations, usually involving a suspect. She was counting on his training, his instincts, and his incredible loyalty. Ace didn't hesitate. With a powerful lunge, he slammed his shoulder against the door, his growls a ferocious symphony of raw power. The antique chest Marcus had shoved against it scraped noisily across the hardwood floor. The sound was deafening, a desperate, frantic struggle. Inside, Marcus cursed loudly. He had underestimated this dog. He had underestimated Sarah. As Ace continued to push, straining every muscle, Sarah looked at the flash drive in her hand. This wasn't just David's legacy. It was her and her baby's future. It was justice. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. Her heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs, but a strange calm settled over her. Fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by a fierce resolve. She was no longer just a pregnant woman in distress. She was David's wife, a canine handler, and a mother protecting her child. "Ready, boy," she whispered to Ace, giving him a quick, reassuring pat. Ace responded with a final, mighty shove, with a splintering crack. The antique chest shifted, tumbling to the side with a deafening thud. The front door swung inward, revealing the darkened hallway. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of dust and something else, something metallic and unsettling. The house was silent again, eerily so. Marcus was hiding. Ace entered first, low to the ground, a dark, muscular shadow, his nose working frantically, sweeping the air. He was on high alert, his protective instincts fully engaged. Sarah followed, stepping over the fallen chest, the flash drive clutched tightly in her hand. The hallway was dimly lit, the afternoon sun struggling to penetrate the drawn curtains. Shadows danced in the corners, playing tricks on her eyes. The house that had always been a sanctuary now felt like a death trap. "Marcus," Sarah called out, her voice echoing in the sudden silence. "I know you're here, and I know what you're looking for." She held up the flash drive, knowing he would see it, would recognize it. It was a risky move, but she needed to draw him out. She needed to know where he was. A rustle from the living room. Then a low chuckle. "Took you long enough, Sarah." Marcus's voice slithered from the shadows. He emerged slowly, stepping into the faint light filtering from the windows. He looked disheveled, a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead, his eyes wild and desperate. In his hand, glinting dully, was a small, familiar object. David's service pistol. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The gun. David's gun. Marcus had found it. He had come prepared, but not enough to anticipate Ace, or David's cleverness. "Put the gun down, Marcus," Sarah commanded, her voice surprisingly steady despite the knot of ice in her stomach. Ace, at her side, let out a deep, menacing growl, his eyes fixed on Marcus, ready to spring. Marcus ignored her. His gaze was fixed on the flash drive in her hand, his eyes burning with a feverish intensity. "Give it to me, Sarah, now." or things are going to get very messy. His finger rested lightly on the trigger. The standoff was complete. Sarah, heavily pregnant, holding the key to justice, with her loyal canine by her side, and Marcus, desperate and dangerous, armed with her dead husband's weapon, ready to do anything to bury the truth. The silent house held its breath, waiting for the inevitable climax. The air crackled with a chilling tension as Marcus emerged fully from the shadows of the living room. His face, usually composed, was now a mask of desperation, his eyes wide and bloodshot, fixed on the flash drive clutched in Sarah's hand. The service pistol, David's pistol, seemed to hum with malevolent energy in his grip, its dark metal glinting menacingly in the dim light of the hallway. "Sarah, don't be foolish," Marcus rasped, his voice raw, betraying the veneer of control he had attempted to maintain. "Just give it to me, now, and we can forget this ever happened." Ace, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest, shifted his weight, a silent, powerful threat. His gaze never left the gun, his instincts screaming danger. He was a living extension of Sarah's will, a loyal shield ready to spring into action. "Forget this ever happened," Sarah scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "You broke into my home, you threatened me and my unborn child, and you're holding my dead husband's gun." "There's no forgetting this, Marcus. This ends now." She held the flash drive higher, a defiant gesture. "This is David's truth, and you're not going to bury it again." Marcus's eyes narrowed, a vein throbbing visibly in his temple. "You don't know what you're talking about. Sarah, David was a fool, an idealist. He meddled in things far beyond his understanding, things that were going to get him killed, one way or another." He took a step forward, then another, slowly closing the distance. "This truth you're so bravely holding is going to destroy lives, innocent lives, including yours. If you don't cooperate, innocent lives," Sarah's voice rose, laced with fury, "or just your life. Marcus, in the lives of all the corrupt officers David was trying to expose." She felt a surge of adrenaline, a cold, clear focus taking over her fear. She had to keep him talking. She had to buy time. For what? She didn't know. But every second was a second she wasn't shot. Marcus flinched, a flicker of genuine shock crossing his face. "He told you everything." "Not everything," Sarah lied. "But enough. Enough to know you're a traitor. Marcus, a dirty cop who murdered his partner to cover his tracks." The accusation hung heavy in the air, piercing the silence. A flicker of something dark, something truly sinister, appeared in Marcus's eyes. The last vestiges of his composure crumbled. "He deserved it," he roared, his voice echoing through the house. "He thought he could expose us, ruin everything I've built. He was going to send me to prison. He was going to expose the network, the whole operation." His voice was ragged, desperate, a confession torn from his throat. "I had no choice. It was him or me." He took another step, raising the pistol slightly. The barrel seemed impossibly large, gaping. A black hole pointed directly at her. "Ace!" "Stay!" Sarah commanded, her voice sharp, cutting through the tension. Ace, though straining, held his ground, a rigid statue of canine fury. She couldn't risk him lunging too soon, not while Marcus held the gun. "Drop the flash drive, Sarah," Marcus snarled, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Drop it, or I swear to God, I'll take it from your cold, dead hands, and I'll make sure that baby never sees the light of day." The threat, direct and chilling, ignited a primal, protective rage within Sarah, the thought of her unborn child, helpless, vulnerable, fueled a sudden, fierce strength, fear transformed into an unwavering resolve. She would not let him win. Not David's murderer. Not the man who threatened her child. She glanced quickly at Ace. His eyes were locked on hers, understanding her unspoken communication. He was waiting for her signal. Sarah thought rapidly. Marcus was desperate. He was losing control. He needed that flash drive more than anything. She had one advantage, the element of surprise. And Ace, you really think you can get away with this? Marcus, Sarah challenged, her voice steady now, devoid of fear. Killing a pregnant woman and her dog in your own house. The whole force will be after you. You'll be caught. Marcus laughed. A short, manic bark of a sound. They'll think it was a home invasion, a random act of violence. I'll be the grieving friend, the one who tried to help. No one will suspect a thing. I've covered my tracks. Sarah, always. He took another step, the gun now steady, aimed directly at her chest. Now, last chance, the flash drive. Sarah made a split-second decision. She wasn't just stalling. She was setting a trap. She had one shot. You really think David was that stupid? She said, her voice dropping to a low, taunting whisper. You think he'd just leave the only copy of his evidence for you to find? He knew you were coming. Marcus, he knew you'd come for it. This isn't the only copy. Marcus's eyes flickered. A momentary hesitation. What do you mean? His voice was wary, suspicion creeping in. He had a plan. Marcus, Sarah continued, playing on his paranoia, his need for control. A contingency. If anything happened to him, if you tried to cover it up, the evidence would be released, automatically, to the right people. It's already in motion. She was bluffing, but she hoped Marcus's own guilt and fear would make him believe her. Marcus's face contorted with rage. You're lying, he roared, shaking his head. You're bluffing. There's no other copy. David wasn't that smart. Oh, but he was, Sarah said, a chilling smile touching her lips. He was smarter than you, Marcus. He always was. She took a small, almost imperceptible step back, angling her body slightly, preparing. Marcus, enraged, took another step forward, his focus solely on Sarah and the flash drive. He was close enough now. Too close. That's enough, Marcus screamed, his finger pressing against the trigger. In that instant, Sarah dropped the flash drive. It clattered loudly on the hardwood floor, skittering a few feet away, directly behind Marcus. Marcus's eyes widened in surprise, and he instinctively glanced down, his gaze following the rolling flash drive. It was only for a split second. A tiny window of opportunity. Ace, get him, Sarah screamed, pointing directly at Marcus. Ace, who had been coiled and waiting, launched himself forward with the force of a battering ram. He moved like a black blur, a whirlwind of muscle and teeth, before Marcus could even register what was happening, before his finger could fully squeeze the trigger. Ace was on him. With a ferocious snarl, Ace slammed into Marcus's legs, taking him down with brutal efficiency. The gun flew from Marcus's hand, clattering against the wall and sliding into the shadowy corner. Marcus hit the ground with a sickening thud, a cry of pain tearing from his throat. Ace was a whirlwind of controlled fury. His powerful jaws clamped onto Marcus's arm, his weight pinning him to the floor. Marcus struggled, cursing, trying to push the dog off, but Ace held firm, his teeth not breaking the skin, but exerting immense pressure, a trained canine's perfect apprehension. Sarah, heart pounding, rushed forward, bypassing the struggling pair. Her eyes scanned the floor for the gun. It lay in the shadows, glinting. She snatched it up, her fingers closing around the cold, heavy metal. The weight of David's pistol felt alien, yet strangely comforting in her hand. "Stay down, Marcus," she commanded, her voice ringing with authority. She pointed the gun at him, her hand steady. Ace, responding to her tone, held Marcus even tighter, a deep growl rumbling in his throat, his eyes fixed on Sarah, awaiting her next command. Marcus lay gasping, his face pale with pain and fear, pinned beneath the powerful dog. You tricked me," he gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You underestimated David," Sarah replied, her voice cold and hard. "And you underestimated me, and Ace." She took a deep breath, the adrenaline beginning to recede, leaving her shaking. But the flash drive was safe. Marcus was apprehended. Justice was within reach. The silence that followed Sarah's command was broken only by Marcus's ragged gasps and Ace's low, warning growls. The large German shepherd held Marcus pinned to the floor, his powerful jaws clamped firmly on the man's forearm, applying just enough pressure to incapacitate without causing severe injury, a testament to his rigorous training and David's patient instruction. Marcus squirmed, whimpering. But Ace remained an unyielding, furry mountain of muscle. Sarah stood over them, David's service pistol heavy and cold in her hand. It felt alien, yet strangely familiar, a conduit to the man she had lost, a symbol of the justice he had sought. Her heart still hammered, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs, but the shaking had subsided, replaced by a steely resolve. The immediate danger had passed, but the gravity of the situation, the sheer audacity of Marcus's betrayal, still weighed heavily on her. "Don't move, Marcus," Sarah commanded, her voice surprisingly steady, echoing with the authority she'd once used in K-9 training. "Any sudden moves, and Ace will tighten his grip. Do you understand?" Marcus, his face pale and contorted with pain and fear, gave a weak nod, his eyes darting frantically between Sarah, the gun, and the snarling dog that held him captive. You can't do this, Sarah," he stammered, his voice choked. "You're pregnant. You're emotional. This isn't you." "This is exactly me, Marcus," Sarah retorted, her eyes hard. "This is David's wife, and this is the mother of his child. You murdered him. You broke into my home. You threatened my baby. You think I'm just going to let that go?" Her gaze flickered to the flash drive, still lying on the polished hardwood floor, a silent testament to Marcus's desperate greed. This truth David protected. It's coming out. All of it. Ace, sensing Marcus's continued resistance, emitted a deeper growl, nudging his head against Marcus's neck as a subtle warning. Marcus whimpered again, visibly flinching. Sarah's mind, despite the chaos, was surprisingly clear. She needed to secure Marcus, and then she needed to call for help she could trust. Her local precinct might be compromised if David's suspicions about a wider network of corruption were true, but she knew other contacts, honest officers David had vouched for, outside her immediate jurisdiction. "Ace, release," Sarah commanded, her voice calm and clear. "Guard," with a soft whine. Ace released Marcus's arm, but immediately repositioned himself. He stood over Marcus, his massive body effectively pinning the man to the floor, a paw resting on his chest, his head held low, eyes fixed on Marcus's face. The message was clear: one wrong move, and the full force of the K-9's power would be unleashed. It was a precise, trained response, a testament to the years David had poured into Ace. Marcus lay trembling, panting heavily. The relief of being released from the dog's bite was quickly replaced by the terrifying realization that he was still utterly at Ace's mercy. And Sarah, armed and resolute, was in control. Sarah took a step back, maintaining a safe distance while keeping the gun aimed steadily at Marcus. She needed to retrieve the flash drive. It was the centerpiece of this entire nightmare. The proof that David's death was no accident, but a calculated murder. "Don't move, Marcus," she repeated, her voice unwavering. She carefully lowered the pistol to her side, but kept it pointed in his general direction, a clear deterrent. Then, with her free hand, she bent down, wincing slightly at the strain on her belly, and picked up the flash drive from the floor. As her fingers closed around the tiny device, a wave of profound relief washed over her. It was safe. David's legacy. "This is going to bring you down, Marcus," she said, holding it up. The small black rectangle reflecting the dim light. And everyone else David was trying to expose. Marcus, panting, finally managed to speak, his voice hoarse. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Sarah, this isn't just me. This is bigger than you can imagine. You pull that thread, and the whole fabric unravels. You'll put yourself in even more danger. You'll make powerful enemies." "I don't care," Sarah said, her voice firm. "David cared about justice. He died for it. I'm not going to let his sacrifice be in vain. I'm not going to let you get away with it." She backed away slowly, reaching for her phone, which was still clutched in her other hand. She needed to make that call. She scrolled through her contacts, bypassing the standard emergency numbers, searching for a specific name: Captain Miller, an old colleague of David's, a gruff but utterly incorruptible officer from a neighboring district. Known for his relentless pursuit of justice and his unwavering loyalty to his K9 handlers, David had always said, "If I ever get into real trouble, the kind the badge won't fix, call Miller. He won't ask questions. He'll just act." "You really think you can trust them?" Marcus sneered, sensing her intention. "The Force is a snake pit. Sarah, especially the ones David was looking into, you call your local guys, and you'll find yourself locked up before you can even finish your sentence. They'll say you're hysterical, unstable, a grieving widow suffering from delusions." "Shut up, Marcus," Sarah snapped. Finding Captain Miller's number, her thumb hovered over the call button. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "This is for David, and for our baby." She pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice. Marcus watched her, a desperate, wild look in his eyes, knowing his time was running out. "Miller." A gruff voice answered on the third ring. "Captain Miller, this is Sarah Davies," Sarah said, her voice clear and concise, cutting through the lingering adrenaline. "David's wife. I need your help. I'm at my house. I have Marcus Thorne, and I have evidence related to David's investigation. I think he murdered David." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. Then, Captain Miller's voice, sharp and urgent. "Sarah, are you safe? Is Thorne armed? Where are you exactly?" "I'm safe for now," Sarah replied, glancing at Ace, who remained vigilant over Marcus. "Marcus is apprehended. My K9 ace has him pinned. I've disarmed him, but he was carrying David's service pistol, and I have the flash drive, the one David was trying to hide." "Good God," Miller breathed, a mixture of shock and grim satisfaction in his voice. "Stay put, Sarah. Do not engage. Do not let him go. I'm dispatching a team. Officers I trust. From outside your district. They'll be there in 10 minutes. Tops. Do you understand? And don't hang up. Stay on the line with me. Understood, Captain, Sarah said, her eyes fixed on Marcus, who had gone utterly still, listening to her conversation, the color draining from his face. He knew he was caught. You really think they'll believe you? Marcus whispered, a pathetic attempt at defiance. A pregnant woman, a dog, against a decorated officer. They'll believe David's evidence. Marcus, Sarah said, her voice filled with a quiet triumph. An ace. He doesn't lie. The next 10 minutes were the longest of Sarah's life. She kept the phone to her ear, listening to Captain Miller's calm, reassuring voice, while her eyes never left Marcus. Ace remained unwavering, a perfect picture of controlled aggression. His growls a constant reminder of the consequences of resistance. The house, once filled with menace, now seemed to thrum with the quiet anticipation of justice. Every second that passed was a victory, every minute a step closer to vindication for David, and safety for her and her child. The piercing wail of sirens, faint at first, then growing steadily louder, cut through the tense silence of Sarah's home. It was the sweetest sound she had ever heard. Marcus, still pinned by Ace, flinched, a fresh wave of panic washing over his face. His eyes darted desperately towards the windows, as if searching for an escape route. But Ace's unwavering weight and Sarah's steady aim with David's pistol ensured he remained immobilized. They're here. Marcus, Sarah stated, her voice devoid of triumph, only a quiet, grim satisfaction. It's over. Ace let out a series of sharp, triumphant barks as the sirens swelled to a crescendo just outside the house. Tires squealed as vehicles came to an abrupt stop. Then, the rhythmic thud of multiple footsteps on the porch, followed by urgent shouts. Police clear the way, K-9 unit. This is Captain Miller, Sarah. Are you all right? Captain Miller, I'm inside, Sarah called out, relief flooding through her. Marcus Thorne is apprehended by Ace in the living room, the front door, still ajar from Ace's powerful shove, swung open fully. 4 uniformed officers, tactical vests on, weapons drawn, burst into the hallway, their faces grim and alert. Leading them was a man with a stern, weathered face and kind eyes, Captain Miller. He assessed the scene in an instant. Sarah, pale but resolute, holding the pistol, Ace, a formidable black shadow, pinning Marcus Thorne and Marcus himself, sprawling on the floor, defeated and terrified. Sarah. Captain Miller's voice was gruff with relief. He quickly holstered his weapon, signaling to his officers, "Secure him." 2 officers moved swiftly, expertly, towards Marcus. As they approached, Ace released his grip, stepping back and sitting perfectly still beside Sarah, his gaze unwavering on Marcus, ready to act if commanded. The officers cuffed Marcus, pulling him roughly to his feet. He offered no resistance, his defiance entirely gone, replaced by a hollow despair. "You're making a mistake," Marcus croaked, his voice cracking. "She's lying. She's crazy." "Save it. Thorne," Captain Miller snapped, his voice cold. He turned his attention to Sarah, his expression softening slightly. "Are you truly all right? Sarah and the baby?" "We're fine, Captain," Sarah said, handing him David's pistol. "Ace protected us. He led me to David's evidence." She held up the flash drive. This is what he was looking for. David's investigation. I believe it implicates Marcus in David's death. Captain Miller's eyes widened, a flicker of grim satisfaction crossing his face as he took the flash drive from her. David was always meticulous, he murmured, his gaze fixed on the small device. He looked from the flash drive to Marcus, a deep-seated anger burning in his eyes. You've got a lot to answer for. Thorne, Marcus, now fully restrained, glared at Sarah, his eyes burning with hatred. You'll regret this. Sarah, this is just the beginning. Take him out, Miller ordered. Waving a dismissive hand, the officers escorted Marcus out, his defiant sneer replaced by a desperate, trapped expression. Once Marcus was gone, Captain Miller turned back to Sarah, his face etched with concern. Let's get you checked out. Sarah, my medic is outside. I'm fine, Captain. Truly. Sarah insisted, though a wave of exhaustion suddenly washed over her. The adrenaline was finally leaving her system, leaving her trembling. Ace nudged her hand, his warm fur a comforting presence. Nonsense, Miller said gently, putting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You've been through a traumatic ordeal, and David, he would want you safe. He nodded towards Ace. That's a good dog. Sarah, a very, very good dog, as the medic, a kind-faced woman, gently guided Sarah to a waiting ambulance for a checkup. Sarah clung to Ace, his presence a powerful anchor. She recounted the entire terrifying ordeal, from Ace blocking the door to the hidden clues and the confrontation with Marcus. Captain Miller listened intently, his expression growing grimmer with each detail, particularly when she described David's dying words and her discovery of the flash drive. David suspected something. I knew it, Miller said, his jaw tight. He was working a case, off the books, that he was very quiet about, said it was too hot for official channels. I didn't push him. Regrettably, I should have. He looked at the flash drive in his hand. This is likely what he was talking about. He trusted you with this, Sarah, and he trusted Ace. He always trusted Ace implicitly, Sarah confirmed, stroking Ace's head. Ace warned me. He pointed out the scratch on the doorframe, led me to the stone, and then to the numbers. He understood what David wanted me to find. Captain Miller shook his head in amazement. Remarkable. That dog is a hero. He turned to one of his technical officers. Get this flash drive to forensics. Immediately. Priority 1. We need to decrypt it. Get a full team on this. An absolute top secrecy. No leaks. This could be big over the next few hours. Sarah's home became a quiet crime scene. Forensics meticulously processed the area, collecting evidence, verifying Marcus's forced entry. Sarah, after being cleared by the medic, sat with Ace, answering Captain Miller's questions in detail. She explained David's cryptic comments about a corrupt network, his growing disillusionment with certain elements within the force. As night fell, and the last of the forensic team packed up, Captain Miller sat with Sarah in her living room. The room, once filled with menace, now felt calm, imbued with a sense of peace and, finally, justice. The flash drive contains a treasure trove. Sarah, Captain Miller informed her, his voice low and serious. Encrypted files, audio recordings, financial ledgers. David was building a case against a major drug trafficking ring, and it implicates several high-ranking individuals, including police officers, politicians, and even a judge. Marcus Thorne is just a small fish in a very large, very dirty pond. Sarah felt a chill, then a surge of vindication. So David was right. It was corruption, absolutely. And Marcus's confession during your confrontation. The details he let slip about silencing David. his desperation to get that flash drive back. It all fits perfectly. We have him on murder, conspiracy, and a host of other charges. This is going to unravel a lot of evil. Sarah, David's work, his sacrifice, will not be in vain. A tear slipped down Sarah's cheek, a tear of relief, of grief, and of profound pride. David had fought for this. Even in death, he had orchestrated this, leaving behind clues and a loyal K-9 to ensure his truth saw the light. "Thank you, Captain," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing me. And thank you for Ace." She pulled the loyal dog closer, burying her face in his fur. Ace whined softly, leaning into her touch, his steady presence a balm to her weary soul. Captain Miller nodded. "David was a good man. Sarah, and you and Ace did something truly extraordinary today. You both upheld his legacy. Justice will be served for David and for everyone he tried to protect. The weight of the day, the fear, the confrontation, finally settled upon Sarah, but beneath it, a sense of profound peace began to bloom. The nightmare was over. The truth was out. And David, her brave, incorruptible David, would finally rest in peace. Days blurred into weeks. The initial shock gave way to a relentless whirlwind of police interviews, legal proceedings, and the slow, meticulous unraveling of the conspiracy David had tirelessly worked to expose. Sarah, despite her advanced pregnancy, became a pivotal witness. Her clear recounting of events, combined with Ace's irrefutable K-9 testimony, providing crucial weight to the mounting evidence. The flash drive, once a tiny, unassuming black rectangle, had become the epicenter of a sprawling investigation. Captain Miller, true to his word, had assembled a team of incorruptible officers and forensic specialists. They worked around the clock in a secure, undisclosed location, decrypting the layers of data David had meticulously compiled. Each revealed file, each audio recording, each financial ledger entry painted a darker, more intricate picture of corruption than anyone had initially imagined. The first few weeks focused on Marcus Thorne, his confession. Caught on the ambulance's internal recording system, a standard procedure Miller had ensured was initiated the moment he arrived, combined with Sarah's eyewitness account and Ace's apprehension, left him no room for denial. He was charged with the murder of David Davies, breaking and entering, aggravated assault, and obstruction of justice. His history of disciplinary issues and growing financial discrepancies, once overlooked or subtly buried, were now brought fiercely to light. But Marcus was merely a thread, a single, festering strand in a much larger, more insidious tapestry. The flash drive revealed names Sarah had never heard, faces she'd never seen, all connected by a web of illicit activities, drug distribution, bribery, evidence tampering, even the silencing of those who dared to question them. High-ranking police officials, council members, even a well-respected district judge, all were implicated. The sheer scope of the corruption was staggering, reaching into the very heart of the city's institutions. Sarah spent hours with Captain Miller and his team, piecing together fragments of conversations she'd had with David in the months before his death. She recalled his subtle warnings, his grim silences after certain phone calls, his quiet frustration with the system. He had been a lonely warrior, fighting a battle no one else knew existed. He was so careful. Sarah, Captain Miller explained one afternoon, sitting across from her in her living room, now thoroughly cleared of any lingering menace. Ace lay at Sarah's feet, his head resting on her lap, a comforting weight. He used burner phones, encrypted messaging, dead drops. He knew the risks. He was building this case for months, entirely off the books. Parallel to his official duties, he trusted no one except you. And perhaps, Ace? He trusted his gut, Sarah corrected softly, stroking Ace's soft fur. And his sense of right and wrong? He just wanted to do what was right. He did more than that. Sarah. He laid the groundwork for a revolution, Miller said, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. This flash drive is like Pandora's box. Once we open it completely, there's no closing it, and everyone involved is going to face justice. The media, initially curious about the hero dog who saved a pregnant woman, quickly latched onto the deeper story as leaks, carefully orchestrated by Miller's team, began to emerge. The city was gripped by a scandal that dwarfed anything in its recent history. Public outrage simmered, demanding answers, demanding accountability. Arrests began quietly, then rapidly. As the net widened, high-profile figures, once untouchable, were suddenly paraded in handcuffs. Each arrest brought a fresh wave of mixed emotions for Sarah, a grim satisfaction that justice was being served, but also a renewed wave of grief for David. He should have been here to see it, to witness the fruits of his tireless, dangerous work, but in a way, he was. His spirit lived on in the evidence he'd meticulously collected, in the unwavering loyalty of Ace, and in the strength of Sarah herself. One evening, as Sarah prepared a quiet dinner, a news report flashed across her television screen. It showed the latest arrest. Judge Harrison, a man who had presided over countless cases, now exposed as a key player in the drug ring, using his position to ensure lenient sentences for associates and harsh ones for rivals. David had mentioned Harrison once, vaguely, expressing his unease with some of the judge's rulings. Now, it all made a horrifying kind of sense. Ace, sensing her somber mood, nudged her hand, then rested his head on her knee, his big, brown eyes looking up at her with profound understanding. He was more than a dog. He was family, a living, breathing connection to David, a silent confidant. He'd be proud, wouldn't he? Boy, Sarah whispered, scratching behind Ace's ears. Ace responded with a soft whine, then a gentle lick to her hand. The physical and emotional toll of the past few weeks began to weigh heavily on Sarah. Her due date was fast approaching, and her body, though resilient, was showing the strain. Captain Miller had insisted she take it easy, urging her to prioritize her health and the babies. He had even assigned a plainclothes officer, Officer Ramirez, to discreetly patrol her street, just as a precaution, though Marcus was behind bars. The wider network might still pose a threat, but Sarah found a strange kind of peace in the quiet moments. She spent time in David's study, now almost fully converted into a nursery. She set up the crib, arranged tiny clothes, and painted whimsical murals on the walls. Each stroke of the brush felt like a tribute to David, a promise to their unborn child that they would grow up in a world where justice, eventually, prevailed. She often found herself sitting by the window, watching Ace patrol the yard, his powerful form a comforting presence. She'd think back to that terrifying afternoon when he had blocked the door, the sheer instinct, the unwavering loyalty, the incredible intelligence he had displayed. He hadn't just reacted. He had actively communicated, guided her, protected her. He was David's final, most precious gift. ensuring his wife and child lived to see his legacy fulfilled. The understanding of Ace's role solidified in her mind. He wasn't just David's dog. He was David's partner, his confidant, and ultimately, his avenger. He had been privy to David's quiet anxieties, his determination. He had seen the dangers, felt the tension David carried. And when the time came, he had acted with heroic clarity, recognizing the threat and leading Sarah to the truth David had entrusted to their keeping. The truth, once hidden behind a canine's steadfast blockade, was now fully exposed, ready to shatter a powerful, corrupt empire, and Sarah, with Ace by her side, was ready for the next chapter of her life, a chapter marked by peace, justice, and a profound, unbreakable bond with the hero who had saved them all. The justice David fought for was finally being realized, and she, with Ace's unwavering loyalty, was ensuring his sacrifice was not in vain. As Sarah's due date loomed, the emotional and physical demands of the past weeks culminated in a profound exhaustion. Captain Miller's cautious warning about lingering threats from the exposed network proved prescient. Though Marcus Thorne was locked away, the powerful individuals implicated by David's flash drive were not. They were desperate, cornered animals, and desperate animals were the most dangerous. One humid evening, a little over a week before her estimated delivery, Sarah experienced a jarring incident. She was in the nursery, meticulously folding tiny onesies, when a faint, almost imperceptible scratching sound emanated from outside her back window. It was subtle, almost like a tree branch scraping, but something in the rhythm, something in the cold pit of her stomach, told her otherwise. Ace, who had been dozing at the foot of the crib, was instantly alert. His ears swiveled, his head cocked, listening. A low, ominous growl rumbled in his chest. Sarah's breath hitched. Officer Ramirez was supposed to be on patrol. He was usually so diligent. Had he missed something? She quietly moved to the window, pulling back a corner of the curtain. The backyard was cloaked in the shadows of twilight, but she could make out a dark, hulking figure by her back fence, attempting to climb over. It wasn't a casual trespasser. The figure moved with purpose, with a chilling stealth. Before she could fully process the sight, Ace let out a ferocious bark, lunging towards the window, his teeth bared in a silent snarl. The figure froze, then quickly retreated, disappearing into the deepening gloom. Sarah's heart pounded, a frantic hummingbird trapped in her chest. They knew. The network knew where she lived. They knew she had the flash drive, or at least that she was the one who had unleashed David's truth. And they were coming for her. She immediately called Captain Miller. His voice, usually gruff, was laced with concern when she recounted the incident. "Stay inside. Sarah, don't go near the windows. I'm dispatching a team immediately. Double the patrols, and we'll have a perimeter set up within minutes." The next hour was a terrifying blur of flashing lights and hushed commands. Captain Miller arrived personally, his face grim. He found a hastily discarded climbing hook near the back fence, confirming it wasn't just a random prowler. This was a professional. "This confirms our fears." "Sarah," Miller said, his gaze hard. "They're getting desperate. The arrests are crippling their operations, and they know you're the source. We're going to have to move you to a secure location for your safety and the baby's." Sarah knew he was right. Her home, once a sanctuary, had become a target. But the thought of leaving, of being uprooted so close to her due date, filled her with a profound sense of vulnerability. "Where will I go?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We have safe houses, undisclosed locations. You and Ace will be well protected, Miller assured her. But it has to happen tonight. The drive to the safe house was tense. Sarah sat in the back of an unmarked police car. Ace curled protectively at her feet, his head resting on her lap. She clutched David's dog tag, which she always wore on a chain around her neck, a tangible link to him. The city lights blurred outside the window, a comforting familiarity giving way to an unknown future. The safe house was a nondescript suburban home in a quiet, isolated cul-de-sac in a neighboring county. It was sparsely furnished, but meticulously clean, with reinforced doors and windows, and a constant, rotating team of armed officers providing round-the-clock security. It was sterile, impersonal, but undeniably safe. Days turned into long, anxious nights. Sarah tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, nesting in her temporary bedroom, preparing for the baby's arrival, but the constant awareness of the armed guards, the unfamiliar surroundings, and the ever-present threat made sleep elusive. Ace was her only constant comfort, his presence a warm, reassuring weight beside her. He seemed to sense her anxiety, always close, his eyes watchful. The legal proceedings against Marcus Thorne and the other implicated individuals were moving swiftly. The flash drive was yielding more and more evidence, creating an undeniable case against them. Grand juries were convened, indictments handed down. The network was crumbling, but that made them even more dangerous. One afternoon, a sharp, piercing pain tore through Sarah's abdomen. It wasn't a false contraction this time. This was different, more intense. She gasped, doubling over. Ace, instantly alert, began to bark, a sharp, urgent cry. He nudged her, whining, his eyes wide with concern. Ace, it's time. Sarah gasped, clutching her belly. The contractions were coming faster now, more powerfully. Officer Davis, one of her assigned guards, rushed into the room. His eyes widened when he saw her. Medic now code red. She's in labor. The safe house, usually quiet and controlled, erupted into a flurry of activity. Medics, already stationed on standby, rushed in. Captain Miller, who had been briefing the security team, appeared instantly, his face pale with concern. Sarah, hang in there, Miller urged, trying to offer reassurance as the medics helped her to a gurney. The drive to the hospital was a terrifying race against time. The siren wailed, a desperate cry against the traffic. Each bump in the road, each sudden stop, sent a fresh wave of agony through Sarah. Ace, in the back of the ambulance, whimpered, his head resting on her hand. A silent comfort. He sensed her pain, her fear, and stayed steadfastly by her side, a furry anchor in the storm. At the hospital, the bright lights and sterile environment were disorienting. Doctors and nurses moved with quiet efficiency, their voices calm and professional. Ace, though usually restricted from public spaces, was given special dispensation due to the extraordinary circumstances. He lay patiently by Sarah's bedside, a silent, unwavering presence, his eyes never leaving her face. Hours later, after a long, arduous labor, a new sound filled the delivery room, the loud, healthy cry of a newborn baby. Sarah, utterly exhausted but filled with an overwhelming sense of joy and relief, looked at the tiny, squirming bundle placed gently in her arms. Her baby, David's baby, a new beginning, a beacon of hope after so much darkness. She looked at Ace, who whined softly, then tentatively licked the baby's tiny hand. His eyes, usually so fierce, were now filled with a gentle adoration. He seemed to understand the profound significance of this moment. "You did it, Ace," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You protected us, both of us." Captain Miller, who had been waiting anxiously outside, entered the room, a rare smile on his face. "Congratulations, Sarah, a healthy baby, and Ace. You've earned your stripes. Boy." He looked at the newborn, then at Ace, a profound respect in his eyes. The birth of her child was a powerful reminder of life's enduring strength, a beacon against the darkness she had faced. She had survived. Her baby was safe, and David's truth, the truth he had safeguarded with his life, was now fully revealed, ready to bring down an empire of corruption. The future, though uncertain, now felt filled with possibility, illuminated by the unwavering loyalty of a K-9 hero. The days following the baby's birth were a blur of exhaustion and overwhelming joy. Sarah named her son David Jr., a tribute to the man who had fought so bravely for justice and who, even in death, had orchestrated their survival. David Jr. was a tiny miracle, a beacon of hope in the wake of immense darkness. Ace, ever vigilant, seemed to understand the profound significance of the new arrival. He would lie patiently by the bassinet, his large, gentle eyes watching the sleeping infant, occasionally nudging Sarah's hand with his nose, as if to remind her of his unwavering protection. Meanwhile, the legal storm ignited by David's flash drive raged on. Captain Miller's team, with the full backing of federal agencies now involved, worked relentlessly. The evidence was undeniable, irrefutable. Marcus Thorne, facing a mountain of charges, quickly crumbled. In a desperate attempt to save himself, he began to cooperate, singing like a canary. His testimony, combined with the encrypted data from the flash drive, opened floodgates. The arrests continued, reaching higher and higher echelons. District Judge Harrison, exposed not only for facilitating the drug ring, but also for obstructing justice and tampering with evidence, was the first major domino to fall. His downfall sent shockwaves through the city's political and legal landscape. Corrupt police chiefs, city council members, and even a state senator were implicated. The headlines screamed with revelations of a vast, entrenched network of crime and corruption. Sarah, recovering at the safe house, followed the news with a mixture of grim satisfaction and profound sadness. Each arrest was a victory for David, a validation of his sacrifice, but it also reopened the wounds of his loss. He should have been there to see it, to witness the justice he had so bravely sought. One afternoon, Captain Miller arrived at the safe house, his face unusually somber. "Sarah, we need your help with something. Marcus Thorne has requested to see you." Sarah's heart seized. "See me, why?" The thought of facing David's murderer again filled her with a visceral dread. "He claims he has information, crucial information that only you can verify," Miller explained, his gaze steady. "He says it's about the scope of the conspiracy, something David alluded to. He's trying to cut a deal, and he thinks this is his last card. We believe he's holding back some vital names, maybe even locations." "It's a trap, Captain," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "He's just trying to get to me." "It's a possibility, Sarah," Miller conceded, "but we've taken every precaution. The meeting will be in a secure federal facility, heavily guarded. Ace will be with you. You'll be behind reinforced glass, and there will be no direct contact. We'll terminate the meeting instantly if there's any hint of a threat. But this could be crucial. Sarah, it could bring down the last pieces of the puzzle. Secure justice for David fully. Sarah looked at David Jr., sleeping peacefully in his bassinet. Then she looked at Ace, who was watching her intently, sensing her turmoil. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about David's legacy, about ensuring his work brought down every last corrupt individual. If Marcus truly held the key to unlocking the remaining secrets, she had to face him. For David, for their son. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm, despite the apprehension. "But Ace comes with me, and David Jr. stays here, with extra security." The federal facility was a cold, sterile building, a labyrinth of reinforced concrete and steel doors. The meeting room was designed for maximum security, a large, intimidating table separated by a thick pane of bulletproof glass, microphones on either side. Sarah, with Ace by her side, sat on one side, flanked by Captain Miller and two armed federal agents. A heavy door slid open on the other side of the glass, and Marcus Thorne was led in, shackled at the wrists and ankles. He was thinner, paler, his eyes sunken and haunted. The arrogant sneer was gone, replaced by a desperate, haunted look. He barely glanced at the agents before his eyes fell on Sarah. His gaze lingered for a moment on the flash drive, which Captain Miller had brought and placed on the table. A visible reminder of Marcus's undoing. Then, his eyes widened slightly as he registered Ace, sitting silently, menacingly. Beside Sarah, Ace let out a low, almost imperceptible growl, a rumble that vibrated through the air, sending a clear warning. Marcus swallowed hard. "Sarah," he rasped, his voice hoarse, "thank you for coming." "Get to the point, Marcus," Sarah said, her voice cold, unwavering. "What do you have to say that's worth this charade?" Marcus took a shaky breath. "It's about the money. The laundered money? David found a way to track it that we didn't know about. A blind spot, a digital ledger, hidden within a seemingly innocuous offshore shell company. It's what he called his insurance policy if anything happened to him." Captain Miller leaned forward. "We've been through every file on that flash drive. Thorne, there's no direct reference to a digital ledger or an offshore account." Marcus shook his head. "It's not explicit. It's a code." David was obsessed with puzzles. Remember, he hid it in plain sight. In the metadata of certain files, a sequence of numbers, dates, times. It looks like random data, but it's a key to accessing the offshore accounts that hold billions. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "That money, it's the real power, the lifeblood of the entire network. Without it, they're nothing." Sarah's mind raced. David's love for puzzles, his insurance policy, the key. It's always where you least expect it. She remembered the intricate details David would weave into his scavenger hunts. Metadata, a brilliant, almost untraceable hiding spot. "Why are you telling us this now, Marcus?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "What's in it for you?" "My life," Marcus said, his voice raw. "They're going to come for me. The ones still out there. The ones David couldn't get. They know I'm talking. They'll silence me in prison. I need protection. Witness protection. A new life. For my family." "You want us to believe you care about your family now," Sarah scoffed. "After what you did to David, to my family. David was a fool. Sarah. He thought he could fight an army alone. He should have joined us. He should have understood that sometimes. You have to compromise to survive." Marcus's voice rose, desperation making him reckless. He was going to expose everything. It was an act of self-preservation, mine. Self-preservation at the cost of an honest man's life, Captain Miller interjected, his voice cold. Tell us about this code. Thorne, prove it. And then, maybe we'll consider your terms, Marcus swallowed, his eyes darting to Ace, who let out another low growl, as if reminding him of the consequences of deception. It's in the Evidence Log 37B PDF file, not in the document itself, but in the creation date. The last modified date, the author field. David manipulated them. They form a cryptographic key, the final piece to unlock the offshore accounts. Captain Miller exchanged a look with the federal agents. This was plausible. David's meticulous nature, his obsession with detail, his love for complex puzzles, it all aligned. And how do we access these accounts once we have the key? Miller pressed. Marcus sighed. A defeated sound. There's a dormant website. It looks like an old, abandoned forum for antique collectors. David called it the Ledger Keeper. It's the gateway. The domain name is encrypted in a string of seemingly random characters in the corrupt officer's list, TEXT file. In the file signature itself, the agents immediately began to type furiously on their laptops, relaying the information to the forensic team. Sarah watched Marcus, a profound sense of closure washing over her. This was it. This was David's final move, his ultimate victory. He hadn't just exposed the network. He had cut off its financial lifeblood. You really thought you could get away with it, didn't you? Marcus, Sarah said, her voice low. You thought you could silence David, steal his work, and walk away clean. Marcus looked at her, his eyes filled with a raw, desperate fear. I had to, Sarah. They would have killed me. They're still out there. They're everywhere. Not anymore, Sarah stated, her gaze unwavering. Thanks to David. And thanks to Ace. She stroked Ace's head, who leaned into her touch, a silent sentinel of justice. The meeting concluded. Marcus Thorne, having delivered his final, desperate plea for survival, was led away. Sarah, with Ace by her side, left the sterile facility. The weight of the flash drive's secrets finally lifted. The confrontation had been difficult, but it had yielded the final pieces of David's complex puzzle. Justice, full and uncompromising, was within reach. The information provided by Marcus Thorne, desperate and self-serving as it was, proved to be the final, crucial key. Captain Miller's team, working in conjunction with federal agents, quickly acted on the details of the hidden digital ledger. Within 72 hours, the seemingly innocuous Antique Collectors Forum website was identified, its domain name decrypted from the metadata David had cleverly embedded. The site, once accessed, was a complex web of encrypted accounts, but with Marcus's provided knowledge of David's methods and the specific cryptographic key David had built, the Federal Cybercrime Unit swiftly breached its defenses. What they found was staggering billions of dollars in laundered money, meticulously detailed in a global network of offshore shell companies. It was the financial backbone of the entire criminal enterprise, far exceeding anyone's initial estimates. The exposure of these funds sent shockwaves far beyond the city limits. International law enforcement agencies were brought in. The sheer scale of the money laundering operation implicated individuals and entities across continents, revealing a dark underbelly of global crime that had operated with impunity for years. Arrests escalated from high-ranking local officials to international financiers and shadowy figures who had previously been untouchable. The news cycle was dominated by the unfolding scandal, each day bringing fresh revelations and prominent arrests. The public, once cynical, watched in awe and outrage as a vast criminal empire, built on corruption and protected by power, began to crumble. Sarah, still at the secure safe house, followed the developments with a quiet, fierce satisfaction. She would read the headlines, watch the news reports, and each time she felt David's presence, his quiet triumph. This was what he had died for. This was his legacy. One sunny afternoon, Captain Miller arrived at the safe house, a rare, genuine smile gracing his usually stern face. He carried a large, official-looking briefcase. Ace, sensing the positive shift in Miller's demeanor, wagged his tail enthusiastically. "Sarah, I have some news," Miller said, his voice brimming with a quiet pride. Judge Harrison, the former police chief, the state senator, they've all pleaded guilty, facing irrefutable evidence from David's flash drive and Marcus Thorne's cooperation. They had no choice. They're facing life sentences, without parole. Sarah felt a wave of profound relief wash over her. "And Marcus?" she asked, her voice low. "Marcus Thorne's deal was contingent on the veracity and value of his information," Miller explained. "His details about the digital ledger were invaluable. He's been moved to a federal supermax prison, under maximum security. He won't see the light of day, but he's alive, which, considering what he did, is more than he deserves." "Justice," Sarah murmured, looking at the sleeping David Jr. in his bassinet. "Finally, true justice. And there's more," Miller continued, his smile broadening. "David's case. The official cause of death has been reclassified. It's no longer a traffic accident. It's officially a homicide. Marcus Thorne has been convicted of his murder." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, blurring her vision. It wasn't a sudden burst of grief, but a slow, profound release. David's death was no longer shrouded in ambiguous circumstances. He hadn't died by random chance. He had been murdered, a target of the very corruption he fought, and now his killer was brought to justice. It was a vindication, a final, public acknowledgement of his courage and his sacrifice. She knelt, burying her face in Ace's fur, her silent tears wetting his coat. Ace whined softly, nudging her with his head, his gentle presence a steady comfort. He seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. Sharing her grief and her relief, "This wouldn't have happened without you, Sarah," Miller said, his voice surprisingly soft. "And without Ace, you both brought David's truth to light. You avenged him." "We just followed David's lead," Sarah replied, her voice thick with emotion. "He did all the hard work." "He laid the trap, yes," Miller conceded. "But you sprung it. With incredible courage, you protected David's legacy, and you protected your child." He nodded towards Ace. "And this dog, he's a legend. The hero K9 who literally blocked a killer and led to the exposure of a global crime ring. The department wants to give him an official commendation, the highest honor." Sarah smiled through her tears. "He deserves it." A few days later, a small private ceremony was held at the police academy. Captain Miller, flanked by federal agents and high-ranking, honest police officials, presided. Ace, wearing a specially tailored police vest adorned with medals from past service, stood proudly beside Sarah. David Jr., only a few weeks old, was cradled in Sarah's arms, wrapped in a blue blanket. Captain Miller spoke eloquently about David Davies, his unwavering dedication, his integrity, and his ultimate sacrifice. He then praised Sarah's courage and resilience. And then he turned to Ace for his extraordinary bravery, his unparalleled loyalty, and his instrumental role in protecting an innocent life and exposing a vast criminal enterprise. I hereby present Police K9 Ace with the Medal of Valor, with Oak Leaf Cluster, for exceptional service above and beyond the call of duty. A collective murmur of appreciation rippled through the small crowd. Miller formally presented a large, gleaming medal adorned with an oak leaf, which was carefully attached to Ace's vest. Ace, as if understanding the significance, let out a soft, contented whine, then leaned against Sarah's leg. The ceremony concluded, and Sarah found herself surrounded by officers, all expressing their profound respect and gratitude. Many had worked with David, and they shared stories of his quiet determination, his wry humor, and his unwavering moral compass. He was one of the best. Sarah, one grizzled veteran officer said, his eyes misting over. We lost a good man, but because of him, and because of you and Ace, we purged some of the rot from this department. He saved countless lives, even after his own was taken. Later that evening, back at the safe house, Sarah sat by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues. David Jr. was asleep in her arms, his tiny chest rising and falling rhythmically. Ace lay at her feet, his head resting on her knees. The weight of the baby, the warmth of Ace's fur, brought a profound sense of peace. The nightmare was truly over. Justice had been served. David's sacrifice had not been in vain. The world was a little safer, a little cleaner, because of his unwavering commitment to the truth, and she, his widow, and their son, his legacy, were safe, guarded by the silent, powerful presence of their four-legged hero. The bond forged in the crucible of fear and betrayal had become an unbreakable testament to loyalty, courage, and the enduring power of truth. Months turned into a year, then two. The ripples of David Davies' sacrifice and Sarah's courage continued to reshape the city. The trials of the implicated officials dragged on, complex and fiercely contested, but the overwhelming evidence unearthed by David's flash drive, bolstered by Marcus Thorne's testimony and Sarah's eyewitness account, led to a cascade of convictions. The once untouchable figures, who had wielded power with impunity, were now behind bars, their empires dismantled, their illicit fortunes seized. The police department underwent a radical overhaul. Captain Miller, a man of unwavering integrity, was promoted, tasked with rooting out any remaining corruption and rebuilding public trust. He often consulted with Sarah, valuing her insights and her unyielding commitment to justice. The department established a new K9 training program, emphasizing the very principles of loyalty, instinct, and communication that David had championed and that Ace had so spectacularly demonstrated. Sarah, no longer confined to safe houses, slowly reclaimed her life. She moved back into her home, the house that had once been a scene of terror, now imbued with a different kind of energy, one of resilience and hope. She rearranged the furniture, painted the walls a brighter shade, and filled the rooms with the joyful sounds of David Jr.'s laughter. Every corner of the house, once a reminder of the lurking danger, now whispered of survival, of courage, and of David's enduring presence. David Jr. grew rapidly, a bright, curious boy with his father's eyes and his mother's determined spirit. He adored Ace, who had seamlessly transitioned from vigilant protector to gentle, patient companion. Ace was a constant shadow, always nearby, always watchful, especially when David Jr. was toddling around, exploring the world with boundless energy. Ace would nudge errant toys back into reach, patiently endure clumsy pats, and even let David Jr. pull his ears with surprising forbearance. Their bond was a beautiful, unspoken testament to love and loyalty, a continuation of the connection Ace had shared with David Sr. Ace became more than just a local hero. He was a national symbol of canine bravery. His story was featured in documentaries, articles, and even a children's book that depicted his heroic act of blocking the door and leading Sarah to the hidden truth. He was frequently invited to charity events for canine units and police academies, always accompanied by Sarah and often a beaming David Jr. He would calmly accept his accolades, his tail wagging subtly, content to be by Sarah's side. Sarah, too, found a new purpose, inspired by David's fight and the profound impact of the corruption he exposed. She began working as a consultant for law enforcement agencies, specializing in canine communication and behavior. She shared David's insights, his innovative training methods, and the crucial role Ace had played. She spoke passionately about the untapped potential of these incredible animals, not just as tools of enforcement, but as intelligent, intuitive partners capable of extraordinary feats of loyalty and deduction. Her expertise, combined with her compelling personal story, made her a sought-after speaker, her voice resonating with authenticity and experience. She also dedicated herself to ensuring David's memory was honored, not just as a fallen officer, but as a hero who single-handedly brought down a corrupt network. She worked with Captain Miller to establish the David Davies Foundation for Canine Excellence and Integrity, a nonprofit organization dedicated to funding canine training, supporting the families of fallen officers, and promoting ethical conduct within law enforcement. Life was far from easy. There were still moments of profound grief, sharp pangs of missing David. But these moments were now accompanied by a deep sense of gratitude and a quiet joy. She had David Jr., a living embodiment of their love. And she had Ace, a constant reminder of David's strength and his unwavering protection. One crisp autumn afternoon, Sarah stood in David's newly renovated study, which now served as her home office. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. David Jr. was napping, and Ace lay curled peacefully at her feet. She looked at a framed photo on her desk, a candid shot of David and Ace during a training exercise, both grinning, their bond palpable. She picked up the small, river-worn stone, the one with the cryptic scratches, David's first clue. It still sat on her desk, a powerful reminder of that terrifying day and the intricate path to truth he had laid. She remembered the fear, the adrenaline, the desperate plea to Ace, and she remembered the feeling of triumph when she finally understood David's message. She knew now that David's death, while tragic, had not been meaningless. It was a catalyst, a spark that had ignited a bonfire of justice. He had been a man of integrity, and in his final act, he had ensured that his integrity would prevail, even against the most powerful forces of corruption. Her new beginning was not one of forgetting, but of healing and building. It was a testament to resilience, to the enduring power of love and loyalty. She had lost her husband, but she had gained so much more: a deeper understanding of courage, an unbreakable bond with her canine companion, and a fierce determination to fight for the values David held so dear. Her son would grow up in a world a little bit safer, a little bit fairer, because of his father's sacrifice, and because of the heroic dog who had stood guard at their door, forever changing their lives. The future was bright, a testament to the fact that even in the face of profound adversity, truth and justice could ultimately prevail. Years passed, bringing with them a quiet healing and a deepening sense of peace. David Jr. grew into a vibrant, inquisitive young boy, his laughter echoing through the house, a joyous melody that filled the void left by his father's absence. Ace, now grayer around the muzzle but no less vigilant or devoted, remained his steadfast companion, a silent guardian angel with a wagging tail. Their bond was extraordinary, a testament to the K9's innate understanding and unwavering loyalty. David Jr. would often recount the story of Brave Ace to his friends, a tale of a dog who saved his mom and found justice, a legend woven into the fabric of their lives. The fight against corruption initiated by David's flash drive continued to reverberate globally. The initial arrests and convictions were just the tip of the iceberg. International investigations, built upon the foundation of David's meticulously compiled evidence and Marcus Thorne's desperate disclosures, led to the dismantling of vast criminal networks spanning multiple continents. Billions of dollars in illicit funds were seized, hundreds of corrupt individuals brought to justice, and countless lives undoubtedly saved from the scourge of drug trafficking and organized crime. David Davies, the quiet K9 officer, had, in death, become a catalyst for unprecedented global change. Captain Miller, now a decorated chief, continued to be a pillar of support for Sarah and David Jr. He ensured David's legacy was never forgotten, championing the David Davies Foundation for K9 excellence and integrity, which grew into a nationally recognized organization. The foundation not only provided cutting-edge training for K9 units across the country, but also offered robust support for the families of fallen officers, creating a community of strength and solidarity. Sarah, a prominent voice for the foundation, traveled extensively, sharing her story, advocating for K9 rights, and inspiring a new generation of law enforcement officers to uphold the highest standards of integrity. Her career as a K9 communication and behavior consultant flourished. She published a best-selling book, The Unspoken Language: How a K9 Saved My Family and Revealed the Truth, which quickly became a staple in police academies and a moving testament to the incredible bond between humans and their K9 partners. Her insights into Ace's behavior during the incident, how he communicated the threat, how he led her to the clues, how he understood her silent commands revolutionized aspects of K9 training, emphasizing intuition and contextual awareness over rote obedience. Life, though forever marked by loss, settled into a rhythm of purpose and quiet joy. Sarah often took David Jr. and Ace to the local park, watching her son chase after a ball, Ace playfully nipping at his heels. In those moments, watching the vibrant energy of her son and the enduring loyalty of her K9, she felt David's presence most strongly. It wasn't a haunting grief, but a comforting warmth, a knowledge that his spirit lived on in the beautiful life they were building. One warm summer evening, Sarah sat on the porch swing, David Jr. asleep in his room, and Ace lying contentedly at her feet. The sunset painted the sky in soft hues of pink and orange, casting long shadows across their peaceful yard. She held a worn photograph in her hand, David, strong and smiling, with a younger, equally exuberant Ace by his side. A wave of bittersweet nostalgia washed over her. She remembered that terrifying afternoon, the day Ace had blocked the door, the sheer terror, the desperate uncertainty, but also The unwavering trust she had placed in her canine, a trust David had meticulously cultivated. Ace hadn't just protected her physically, he had guided her, helped her decipher David's final, brilliant puzzle. He had been the living link to David's truth, the silent sentinel who ensured justice was served. Their bond, forged in the crucible of fear and betrayal, had deepened into something profound and unbreakable. Ace wasn't just a dog, he was family, a survivor, a hero, and a constant reminder of the incredible strength found in loyalty and the enduring power of love. He was the living embodiment of David's legacy, a testament to the belief that even in the face of overwhelming evil, goodness, truth, and unwavering courage would ultimately prevail. The house, once a scene of a terrible confrontation, was now a home filled with warmth, laughter, and an abiding sense of peace. The shadows of the past had receded, replaced by the light of a new beginning. Sarah had found her strength, her voice, and her purpose in the wake of tragedy. And David Jr. would grow up knowing his father was a true hero, and that a magnificent canine had protected them all, ensuring that justice, in the end, always prevailed. Their story was a powerful testament to resilience, to the quiet power of fidelity, and to the extraordinary bonds that defy even the darkest of circumstances.